I landed in Denver just past dusk, the kind of soft blue evening that makes the whole foothill line glow. After a week in Paris for a client review, my mind was still half in another time zone, half in the quiet rhythm of airports and taxis. I was 32 years old, carrying the weight of an entire quarter's work on my shoulders. But there was something comforting about driving up the familiar street toward my parents' house in Boulder. I told myself it would be a simple visit, a quick hello, maybe a late dinner, then back to my own place to sleep off the jet lag. I should have known better. My family never did simple things. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something strange in the air. Mom rushed forward with this bright, stretched smile that did not reach her eyes, the kind she used whenever she was guarding a secret she thought I might ruin. Dad stood behind her, cheerful in a way that felt staged. And Savannah, my younger sister, sat on the couch with her phone in hand and her chin lifted just enough to make it clear she expected me to admire her for reasons unknown. For a second, I wondered if I had walked into someone else's celebration. Maybe they had good news. Maybe after so many years of being the dependable one, I could just arrive like a normal daughter and not the family problem solver. But the house was too clean, too quiet, too rehearsed. My stomach tightened the way it always did around them, like my body remembered long before my mind caught up. I set my travel bag down and took in the scene, waiting for someone to explain why they were standing in formation like a welcome committee that had practiced in the mirror. I was still pulling off my coat when the thought crossed my mind, and maybe you can relate to moments like that when intuition curls in your chest before anything is said out loud. Before I go further, I want to ask you something. What are you doing right now while listening to my story? Are you driving home, drinking tea, or winding down for the night? I ask because I remember exactly what I was doing when everything shifted for me. I was setting my suitcase by the stairs, brushing lint off my sleeve, believing I had just come home to rest. And right then, my whole life cracked open. Savannah leaned back into the cushions, smirking like she was waiting for my reaction to something she had not yet announced. Mom clasped her hands together as if she were about to host a holiday commercial. Dad cleared his throat in that cheerful tone he only used when he knew he was about to upset me, and hoped fake optimism would soften the blow. I asked how things were going at home, how the house had been, how they were feeling. It was just small talk. Barely more than habit. Dad interrupted before I could finish the sentence. Everything is wonderful, sweetheart. Actually, something important came up while you were gone. Something we're all very excited about. My heart beat once, heavy. That tone always meant trouble. Always. I steadied myself and asked what happened. Dad rubbed his palms together the way he did when he hoped to speed past the consequences of whatever he had done. Mom nodded beside him like a silent cheerleader. Savannah tilted her chin like she was waiting for applause. And then Dad said it. We sold your penthouse. I froze. It was quiet. The kind of quiet that steals the air out of your lungs. The penthouse. My penthouse. The one I had bought after a decade of working myself raw, after building a career while my family leaned on me financially, emotionally, silently expecting that I would carry them the way a steel beam carries them. Weight of an entire roof. I stared at Dad's face, waiting for him to laugh at his own joke, but he just kept smiling, proud of himself. I asked him to repeat it because surely I misheard. Surely I was too tired from traveling. But Mom jumped in, cheerfully explaining how the place had been empty anyway, how it made no sense for it to sit unused when I was away so often. She said they had taken care of everything for me, as if stealing a property was the same as watering someone's houseplants. Before I could speak, Savannah finally stood up. She walked toward me with this delighted glow, like everything happening was good news. She said the money was going toward her wedding. She said it like she was announcing a charitable act they expected me to thank them for. Her wedding, which she had already been planning like she was royalty, complete with a price tag that could have bought a small lake house. She said it as if my penthouse was a family resource she was entitled to. I asked them why. Why would they sell something that belonged to me? Dad rolled his shoulders, like it was nothing. He said I never used it. He said it was just sitting there. Mom chimed in that families share things, that we all have to make sacrifices for each other. And this was for a joyful occasion. Savannah tossed her hair and told me not to be dramatic. She said the way someone spits a seed. She said I should be grateful they used the money for something meaningful. She said I could always buy another place since I made so much money anyway. I felt that old familiar punch behind my ribs, the one that came from years of being the responsible daughter who never caused trouble, who paid bills quietly, who stepped in for every crisis, who never got recognition unless she was useful. I looked at my family and realized not one of them saw what they had done as wrong. Not one of them felt guilt or shame or hesitation. Dad patted my shoulder. He said we all agreed that Savannah's big day was worth it. Mom squeezed my hand as if comforting me for something I should be proud to give up. Savannah said weddings were once in a lifetime, and she deserved hers to be perfect. I stood there feeling like the ground had shifted half an inch to the left, and I was the only one trying to stand straight. They wanted me to smile. They wanted me to say it was fine. They wanted me to allow them to rewrite the story so they were generous heroes, making adjustments for the common good. I saw it in all three faces. They expected the same Maya I had always been, the one who swallowed anger with a polite nod, who never challenged them, who believed that being a good daughter meant having no boundaries. So I took a breath, a long, slow, steady breath. My chest did not shake. My hands did not tremble. I set my purse down on the entryway table and folded my arms calmly. Something inside me clicked into place. Not anger, not shock, but clarity, a bone-deep certainty that they had gone too far and did not even understand how far that was. They waited for me to break. I did not. I smiled instead, a small smile, controlled, steady, the kind that always made Savannah nervous because she could never tell what I was thinking when I did that. Dad finally asked if I had anything to say. Mom tilted her head toward me like she wanted her approval stamped across my forehead. Savannah folded her arms and raised both eyebrows as if daring me to argue. I looked at all of them, then said slowly, "The penthouse you sold was actually—" Dad's face was drained of color before I even finished the sentence. Mom's smile collapsed. Savannah's confidence faltered just enough for her eyes to dart sideways. And that is exactly where I stopped speaking. I let the silence settle between us, thick and heavy, because for the first time in my life, I was not the only one who felt shaken. I watched them shift, uneasy, finally sensing that something had slipped beyond their control. The moment hung there, suspended, right before everything they thought they understood began to unravel. I held their eyes, still smiling, and let the weight of what I had not yet revealed linger in the room, like a storm cloud gathering speed. Then the room went quiet, absolutely quiet, and I knew chapter 1 of this story had just ended. I walked out of my parents' house with their silence still clinging to me. I did not slam the door or raise my voice. I simply stepped into the cool Boulder night and let the air clear the fog of what had just happened. They had sold my penthouse while I was in Paris, and for a moment on that porch, I felt like I was 17 again, realizing the rules in our family had never been the same for me as they were for Savannah. The drive to Denver felt longer than usual. The highway lights smeared across the windshield as if the world were trying to blur my thoughts for me. But everything inside my mind was painfully sharp. My small, temporary apartment was quiet when I walked in, just the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint rattle of the heater coming on. I dropped my suitcase by the wall and leaned against the counter, staring at nothing. The jet lag should have hit me first, but the shock was quicker. They really did it. While I was defending a major investment in a boardroom on the other side of the world, my own family had walked into some real estate office and pretended to be me. They signed documents with my name, spent the money, and then smiled at me as if they had given me good news. And Savannah had the nerve to tell me not to be dramatic. It was all so familiar, it hurt. That feeling in my chest, the one that made it hard to breathe, was not new. It belonged to another lifetime. Another version of me that spent years believing I could earn fairness if I just tried hard enough. Growing up in that house taught me the truth long before I could name it. There were 2 daughters, but only one got protected, and it was never me. I remember standing outside Savannah's bedroom when she was little, listening to Mom soothe her after the smallest disappointment, assuring her she was special, delicate, deserving. Meanwhile, if I brought home anything less than perfect, Dad would talk to me about responsibility, about how being the oldest meant I had to set the standard. Savannah got grace even when she messed up. I had expectations even when I succeeded. It kept going like that. She wanted a dance camp, and she got it. I wanted a science program. It vanished from the budget without explanation. When she forgot assignments, someone made phone calls on her behalf. When I forgot something, Dad told me excuses would ruin my future. Savannah was the fragile one. I was the strong one. That was the script, and it was carved so deeply, it became the rhythm of our family. By high school, I was the one who kept track of bills, who filled out forms, who made sure things ran smoothly when Dad misplaced something important again. Savannah lived as if the world would rearrange itself to keep her comfortable. In our house, it often did. When I got that full-ride scholarship to the University of Colorado, David congratulated me and then immediately pointed out how helpful it was that they no longer had to worry about my tuition. Mom said it would finally free up money to fix the roof. Even my biggest achievement became a financial convenience for them. I worked 2 jobs through college, sped through my degree, and jumped into finance because numbers felt safe, predictable. They did not shift expectations depending on who needed more attention. At Global View Capital, I learned how to calculate risk, how to anticipate pitfalls, and how to protect investments. What I did not expect was that I would eventually need to protect myself from the people who raised me. The mortgage situation started small. David mentioned a missed payment and looked embarrassed, so I covered it. Then a car loan, then a credit card, then another. They always said it was temporary. They always acted like they hated needing help. But deep down, I think they knew they could count on me to fix it, even if that meant draining myself dry. Meanwhile, Savannah spent her early 20s treating money like theater props, clothes, trips, furniture she could not afford. She never seemed worried because she knew Mom and Dad would find a way. And when they could not, I would. When I bought the Penthouse at 28, it was the first real sign to myself that I had built a life of my own. High ceilings, sunlight pouring in every morning, a balcony that framed the Denver skyline like a painting. I stood in that empty living room the day I moved in and promised myself that, no matter what happened with my family, this space would belong entirely to me. A year later, one of the senior partners at my firm noticed me reading legal material and asked about it. When I told him I was exploring ways to protect my assets, he listened carefully. Then he said if I had family dynamics that made me nervous, I should never leave anything important in my personal name. Not because of malice, he said, but because some people simply believe they have a claim to whatever you build. I thought about Savannah's constant entitlement, about Mom's guilt-soaked requests, about Dad's subtle comments linking my success to family duty. I heard the echo of every moment they turned my accomplishments into their safety net. So I followed the partner's advice. 6 months later, Nova Ridge Holdings was formed, dry name and all, with one purpose: to legally own the penthouse I bought with my own earnings. The deed was transferred properly, recorded properly, and no one in my family knew. At the time, it felt paranoid. Tonight, it felt prophetic. I pushed away from the counter, walked into the tiny living room, and sat down with my laptop resting on my knees. The silence in the apartment felt cleaner than the silence in my parents' house had. That silence had been full of expectation, full of the weight of the role I played my whole life. This one was mine. I logged into my email and found the Nova Ridge folder. Each document opened with a soft click. The formation records, the title transfer, the email exchanges with the attorney. The certified deed listed the company as the sole owner, not me, not my parents, not anyone who had ever taken advantage of my sense of obligation. My chest loosened. For the first time since Dad said we sold your penthouse, I felt the ground settle beneath my feet. They had forged a signature on a document that no longer represented ownership. They had sold something they believed was mine. But their mistake was assuming I would always leave myself unprotected. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that truth settle like warm sand. Then I opened them and downloaded every file, saving them to my secure drive, my mind already moving toward what needed to happen next. It was not rage that filled me. It was clear, the kind you feel when a lifetime of patterns finally makes undeniable sense. My phone buzzed with a message from Savannah. I did not even glance at it. I knew the tone without reading. Accusations, blame, demands. She had spent her whole life believing other people existed to catch her. Tonight would be no different. But I was different. I looked at the screen, at the unmistakable proof that the penthouse was safe and legally shielded, and I felt something I had not felt in years. Power. Not over them, but over myself. Over the story they had forced me into. Over the fear that if I did not keep everything running, the whole family would crumble. I sat there a while longer, letting the hum of the refrigerator fill the room, while outside the city, lights flickered. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who always tried to earn appreciation that never came, who believed that sacrifice was the price of love. I thought about how easily they assumed they could take from me, and how shocked they were when I did not react the way they expected. Tonight was not about revenge. Not yet. Tonight was about remembering who I had been before they pressed all that weight into my shoulders. I reached for my laptop again and opened a blank document. I was not sure yet what I would need to write down. Maybe a timeline. Maybe a plan. Maybe a reminder to myself that I was done playing the part they assigned me. Before I began typing, I looked across the dim apartment and whispered something I had never said out loud before. Never again. The next step was clear. All I had to do was take it. I leaned back against the cushion, staring at the ceiling of that little Denver apartment, and for the first time that night, I knew exactly what I had to do next. My phone was still warm in my hand. I scrolled to Logan's name and hit the call before I could overthink it. He picked up almost instantly. The sound of his voice made my shoulders drop an inch, like my body finally remembered what relief felt like. I didn't ease into the conversation. I told him everything. I told him I had just flown back from Paris, walked into my parents' living room, and learned they sold what they believed was my penthouse. I told him about the way Dad smiled as if he'd made a brilliant financial decision. How Mom reminded me that families make sacrifices. How Savannah smirked like I was being dramatic for not applauding her too. $150,000 wedding fund. I told him I believed they forged my name, but that the property wasn't even under my personal ownership. The penthouse belonged to Nova Ridge Holdings. I heard a chair scrape on his end of the line. He asked me to send every document I had. I forwarded the deed, the LLC paperwork, the emails with my attorney from the year I transferred ownership. As each attachment was sent, a knot in my stomach loosened. He went quiet while he opened everything. The only sounds were the soft clicks of his mouse and the scribble of his pen. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, sharper, more deliberate. He said the deed was airtight. The LLC transfer had been done correctly. Legally, no one in my family had the authority to sell that property. He said if they signed anything in my name, we were dealing with fraud. Not a misunderstanding. Not a family disagreement. Fraud. The word hit me with a strange kind of calm, like a confirmation of something I already knew in my bones. Then Logan asked something that made my breath catch. Has anyone from my family contacted the HOA or building management recently? I told him I hadn't heard anything about that, but knowing Dad, it wouldn't surprise me. He had always been bold when he thought the rules didn't apply to him. Logan said he needed to make a call and asked me to hold. I paced the living room, counting steps out of habit. The apartment felt too small for the size of the problem in front of me. After a few minutes, he came back. He said the HOA manager remembered a call from Dad. He had asked for ownership documents, claiming there'd been a misunderstanding in the records. The manager checked, saw Nova Ridge Holdings was the owner, and told him that if there was any update needed, the company representative had to request it. Dad never followed up. Hearing that made my stomach twist. This hadn't been a spur-of-the-moment decision. Dad had been testing the waters, checking for vulnerabilities, trying to see what he could get away with before I even knew anything was wrong. I sank onto the couch again. Logan asked if I was still there. I said yes, though my voice sounded like it came from another room. He told me he wanted to check one more thing, a bank contact who knew my family very well. Russell. The moment I heard his name, memories of warm greetings at Mountain Crest Bank flashed in my mind. When I was young and saving for college, he always treated me like my $20 deposits mattered. Later, when I helped my parents navigate overdue bills, he always looked at me with a quiet sympathy he never said out loud. Logan said Russell had already reached out earlier about an unrelated matter, and he had left a voicemail a few minutes ago. Logan told me to check it. I played the message on speaker. Russell's voice was steady, but there was something strained in it. He said he couldn't share account details, but he wanted me aware that the proceeds from the Penthouse sale had been flagged. The transaction wasn't fully cleared. There were inconsistencies with the seller information and the authorization document provided. In bank terms, that meant one thing: someone tampered with the paperwork. My throat tightened. My parents had celebrated a victory they had never actually secured. They thought the money was theirs. They were already spending it. And yet, the bank was preparing to freeze everything. Russell ended by suggesting I contact legal counsel immediately. I looked around the dim apartment, the furniture humming faintly with the heater. I no longer felt the shock. What I felt now was certainty. Logan asked how I was doing. I almost laughed. The truth was, I felt like lightning had run through me. My whole life I had been told not to make trouble. Tonight, trouble had found me, and I felt strangely steady in the middle of it. He said we needed to act fast. He listed the next steps, clear and methodical. If I sent formal authorization in writing, he could intervene with the title company and request that the entire transaction be placed on hold. He could inform the buyer's attorney that the seller did not have legal authority. And he could file an emergency injunction within the next day or so to freeze the funds entirely. Then he added that the best part was that none of this required confrontation. Not yet. The legal process alone would stop everything in its tracks. I asked how long it would take. He said within 24 to 48 hours, the accounts tied to the sale would be frozen. Dad, Mom, and Savannah wouldn't be able to access a single dollar. My chest rose in a slow, heavy breath. The thought of them standing at a bank counter, confused and scared, made something inside me settle in place. Not joy, not revenge, just balance. Logan's tone softened then. He knew my family. He had watched me clean up their messes for years. He told me that people like my parents only change when consequences become too heavy to ignore, and he believed those consequences were already forming around them. I sat up straighter, the weight in my spine lifting. I realized that this time, I didn't have to protect them. I didn't have to smooth anything over. I didn't have to bend myself into someone easier for them to take advantage of. He asked me to check my email. I opened his message and found a drafted authorization letter ready for my signature. I read it line by line. It stated that I, as managing partner of Nova Ridge Holdings, authorized him to act on the company's behalf, request records, initiate legal holds, and notify all parties involved of potential fraud. My hand didn't shake as I typed my name. A second email arrived right after. He needed copies of my ID, the original LLC formation documents, and a short summary of the events in my own words. I sent everything within minutes. He replied that he would begin immediately. The room felt different, warmer, like I had finally stepped into my own skin. Logan asked if I had heard anything more from my parents. I told him no, and that I expected the next call from them would come when they realized the money they were counting on was not appearing in their account. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't an uncomfortable pause. It was the kind that comes right before the first domino falls. Then Logan cleared his throat. He said one more thing, almost under his breath. He said Dad was about to regret what he had done much sooner than I imagined. I thought of that evening in Boulder. Dad pacing with pride, Mom glowing with self-righteousness, Savannah dripping triumph like perfume. None of them thought for a second that what they'd done was wrong. None of them imagined there could be consequences. But consequences were coming. carefully, quietly. In this way, only the law can. I thanked Logan, genuinely, deeply, in a way I had not thanked anyone in a long time. He told me to try to get some rest. I said I would, though we both knew I wasn't going to sleep much that night. When I hung up, the apartment seemed calmer. I walked to the window and looked out at the Denver lights, scattered across the dark, like tiny signals from a world still moving, even when mine felt suspended. I thought about Dad's face when I said, "The penthouse you sold was actually—" I remembered the way the smile cracked at the edges, the way realization crept into his eyes like a shadow on a wall. He didn't know what was coming. Not yet. But the truth had already started its slow, steady crawl toward him. I sat back down on the couch, pulled my laptop close, and opened the secure drive where I stored all the Nova Ridge documents. I looked at each file again, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel the weight of my own preparation, the ownership transfer, the notarized signatures, the digital logs, all the quiet steps I had taken to protect myself without even knowing when I would need them. Tonight, I needed them. I closed the laptop gently. For the first time since Paris, my breathing felt full and steady. What came next would be complicated and emotional and probably painful. But for once, I wasn't stepping into the line of fire unarmed. I stood up, walked into the small bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed. My phone buzzed again. Savannah. I let it go dark without touching it. I lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would begin the real unraveling, and I knew exactly who would be tangled in it. But for now, for tonight, I let my eyes close, letting the quiet settle around me like a heavy blanket I had earned. And I allowed myself the smallest, softest thought. This time, I was not the one who would pay the price. I let my eyes stay closed for a few seconds the next morning, letting the quiet of the apartment settle, before I remembered what waited. Outside that silence, the unraveling had begun, just like I knew it would. And the first sign came before I even sat up. My phone vibrated across the nightstand, rattling like it was trying to escape. I reached for it, expecting Logan, but the caller ID flashed a different name, Destiny, Savannah's wedding planner. I let it ring. Then ring again, until it finally dropped into voicemail. A moment later, my inbox lit up with a string of emails, each one marked urgent or help or immediate response needed. I opened the first. Destiny's tone was frantic. Payments weren't clearing, banks were stalling, vendors were demanding confirmation. The date for the venue was in jeopardy. She needed someone, anyone, to explain what was going on. I wrote one line. Please contact my sister Savannah directly. Then I closed the laptop. My phone buzzed with a text. Maya, something is wrong with the account your dad said was funded. The bank is saying the transaction is under review. Vendors are calling me nonstop. Another text came before I finished reading. If I do not get answers soon, this wedding is going to fall apart. I typed the same response. Please contact my sister Savannah directly. The morning sunlight crept through the blinds while the phone kept vibrating behind me. I poured a glass of water and drank slowly, letting my heartbeat settle while Destiny's panic kept spilling across my screen. A few minutes later, a different name appeared. Avery. Are you seeing what is happening with your sister's wedding? People in the wedding circles are already talking. I asked her what she was hearing. She replied almost instantly. Vendors are saying every payment tied to the Grant wedding bounced. Someone whispered that your family used money from a property sale. Rumors are spreading that something about it looks off. If I were you, I would distance yourself before people assume you were involved. I thanked her and set the phone down again. The notifications kept coming, but I did not open them. I did not need to. Every subject line said the same thing. Payment failed, booking at risk, service on hold. This wedding that Savannah had treated like her personal coronation was cracking at every seam, and she had no idea that the fault line ran straight beneath her own feet. Then Destiny called again. I ignored it. A voicemail arrived seconds later. Maya, the venue says the check bounced. Other vendors are refusing to continue until funds are clear. I am completely in the dark here. If there is something I need to know, call me. I cannot reach anyone in your family. Her voice was shaking. The next message was worse. Everything is unraveling. If someone does not fix this today, none of these services will still be available. I listened without reaction. Logan had already warned me that the freeze would hit fast, and my family, in their arrogance, had probably spent money before it even settled. They had always assumed rules were suggestions. I walked to the window, watching people on the street go about their ordinary routines. Dogs on leashes, cars idling at the light, kids with backpacks heading to school. Life stayed steady while my family's carefully curated fantasy began collapsing in on itself. I did not want revenge. I wanted the truth, and truth was finally moving through every locked door they thought would protect them. Another unknown number popped up. I opened the message. It was the venue director. Unless payment is received within the next few hours, we will have to release the date. The email was polite, but final. 2 more followed from other vendors. Same message. No payment, no service. I sat back on the couch, pulled the blanket over my lap, and let the phone buzz itself breathless on the cushion beside me. Their panic washed through every notification, rising, urgent, desperate, but none of it touched me. I had spent years being the person who held everything together, the responsible one, the fixer, the safety net. My silence now felt like the first deep exhale after holding my breath for far too long. One more call from Destiny came in. I did not move to answer. Then a text. Please, Maya, I cannot reach your family. Your sister is calling me every few minutes. Vendors are threatening to cancel. I am losing control here. Please just tell me what is happening. A long pause. I do not want to see this wedding collapse. I typed the same reply as before. Please contact my family directly. Then I set the phone aside and leaned back into the cushions, letting every notification slide across the screen like distant thunder. Everyone was another thread snapping loose from the fantasy my family had built. Every one was a truth they had chosen not to face. And I waited, quiet and steady, knowing this was only the beginning of the storm they had created with their own hands. I watched the last of Destiny's frantic messages fade from my phone screen, the apartment finally quiet again, when the next wave of chaos began to roll in. It started with a voicemail alert, then another, then 3 more in quick succession. I reached for the phone, expecting more vendors, but the name flashing across the screen made me pause. Russell. I had not heard his voice in years. He was the loan officer who used to handle my parents' accounts at First Mountain Federal Bank before he retired. He always treated me kindly when I was younger, always made an effort to explain things Dad did not want explained. The idea that he was calling me now sent a strange chill down my spine. I pressed play. Maya, this is Russell. I hope you remember me. I am calling because something has happened that I think you need to know about. The transaction on the property sale was flagged for irregularities. The bank has frozen all funds associated with it. I cannot go into details on voicemail, but this is serious. Please call me back. He ended with a sigh that sounded heavy enough to carry the weight of the entire situation. I set the phone on the table, but did not call back. Not yet. The next call came in immediately. Dad. I let it ring until it dropped, then Mom, then Savannah. One after another, relentless, the notifications stacking up on my screen like falling dominoes. I turned the phone face down and walked into the kitchen, but even from across the room, I could hear the vibration rattling against the counter. When I finally picked it up again, there were 6 new voicemails. I clicked the most recent one. Dad's voice burst out, sharp and frantic. Maya, what is going on? We just left the bank and they said the money from the Penthouse sale is under review. They froze it. They actually froze it. Your mom is in tears. Savannah is losing her mind about her dress appointment. Call me back right away. This is ridiculous. Someone needs to fix this. The message cut off abruptly, like he had run out of breath. I did not flinch. I just replayed it once, slowly, frozen, faster than I expected. Another voicemail came in. Dad again. Maya, the bank manager, said something about signature discrepancies. They are accusing us of fraud. Fraud. Do you understand what that means? They will not release a penny. You have to call them. You have to tell them this is a misunderstanding. We are family. Please call me back. His voice broke on the last sentence. But I felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, just a deep, calm certainty that this was the moment everything began to fold in on him. Then Mom left a message. Sweetheart, we need your help. The bank says the sale is flagged. They are refusing to let us withdraw anything. We tried 2 other banks and they said the same thing. Just call them, honey. Tell them this is all fine. You can straighten this out in 2 seconds. You always fix things for us. Always fix things. There it was again. The same role they believed I owed them. The same assumption that I existed to solve whatever they broke. I let her message sit without response. By noon, my phone looked like it was glowing. More than 20 missed calls, nearly 15 voicemails. Text after text piled across the lock screen. It was the one from Savannah that I opened first, though I did not know why. I hope you are happy. The boutique canceled my fitting because the payment bounced. Twice. Do something. You are ruining my wedding. I put the phone down and walked to the window, letting the sunlight warm the side of my face. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. A couple walked hand in hand. A cyclist pedaled through the intersection. Life carried on, steady and unaware. My family, on the other hand, was spiraling. Another call from Dad came in. I let it go to voicemail, then pressed play. Maya, I just talked to another bank. They froze everything tied to that sale. They said an investigation is underway. They would not tell me anything more. Maya, please, I need you to call me. I think something is very wrong. I think we are in trouble. His breath hitched before the beep ended the message. It was the first time he sounded afraid. Then came the message where the illusion finally cracked. Maya, this is Dad. I need you to call me back. Your mom is panicking. The bank is talking about forged documents. They are saying the sale might be invalid. They want us to stay available for questions. Maya, if you know something about this, you need to tell me. This is not a joke. Please. I rewound the message once more to hear the word Dad almost never used. Please. I felt the air shift around me, the way it does right before a storm breaks. It was happening. They were beginning to understand that what they had done was not just a betrayal. It was a crime. And no one was coming to save them this time. I sat down at the kitchen table with my glass of water and replayed the messages in order, watching the progression from irritation to confusion to fear. It was a pattern I knew well. I had seen it every time life stopped bending in the direction Dad expected. The next message was shorter. It arrived at 12:41 in the afternoon. Maya, I know you are getting these messages. Call me. We need to fix this. I need you. The last words stumbled out of him like they tasted uncomfortable in his mouth. That was when another call came in, and I watched the screen light up with his name again. I ignored it, but 10 seconds later, a voicemail icon appeared. This one was different, though. I could hear it before I played it. Something in the silence felt heavier. I pressed play. Maya, this is Dad. The bank manager just told me the funds will not be released. Not today. Not tomorrow. They froze everything. They are reviewing signatures. They are talking to someone from the county clerk's office. I do not know what is happening, but I think we made a huge mistake. Call me back. Please call me. He sounded lost. Completely lost. But still not sorry. Not yet. The message ended abruptly, swallowed by the background noise of a busy lobby. I was about to set the phone down when it vibrated again. This time, it was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the transcription popped up, and I scanned it. This is First Mountain Federal Bank. We need to inform you that there was an incident involving your father. He became agitated during a discussion about account restrictions. We requested that he leave the premises. No further action will be taken if the situation is resolved. Please call us if you have questions. I exhaled slowly, letting the weight of that sink in. Dad had gone to the bank again, and he had lost control. Again. I pressed play on the message to hear it fully. There was a faint echo in the background. the unmistakable hum of a busy bank lobby. Then a firm voice, probably a bank manager, saying something like, "Sir, you need to lower your voice," followed by Dad snapping back that they were stealing his money, that they had no right, that he deserved answers. A rustle of movement followed, chairs scraping, the sharp tone of someone instructing him to exit. Then the message was cut off. For the first time that day, I felt something that was not anger or exhaustion. It was finality. This was the consequence he never believed would reach him. He had always acted like the world would bend if he pushed hard enough. But this time, the world did not move. It pushed back. I placed the phone face down again, letting the silence settle. Outside, the sun was beginning to dip behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the street. A quiet calm washed over the apartment, filling every corner like a warm breath. Dad was learning what it felt like to lose control. Mom was learning what it felt like to be helpless. Savannah was learning what it felt like to watch a fantasy collapse. And all of them were learning it without me. I stood by the window, watching the shifting light, and felt the tiniest hint of relief. Not joy, not satisfied, just the soft exhale that comes when the truth finally begins to speak for itself. Somewhere across Boulder, David was walking out of that bank with the weight of his decisions pressing on him harder than he ever expected. And he had no idea that this was only the beginning. I found out just how fast the next phase started about an hour later, when my phone lit up in a way that had nothing to do with banks or planners. At first, it was just a couple of notifications from Instagram, then a handful more. Then my screen turned into a waterfall of pings from apps I had not opened in weeks. I frowned, unlocked my phone, and saw what had stirred everything up. Savannah. She had posted a long, teary-eyed story series and tagged me in the very first slide. I tapped it open. There she was, sitting in her childhood bedroom at my parents' house. Mascara smudged just enough to look tragic, soft lighting making her look like the heartbroken heroine in some low-budget movie. Across the screen, she had written a caption in big, dramatic letters. "Sometimes the people you expect to support you are the ones who destroy everything." In smaller text underneath, she had tagged my account. I did not need to hear the sound to know what she was saying, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned the volume up. She was talking about how she had dreamed about her wedding her whole life, how she had planned every detail since she was a teenager, how her family had made arrangements so that her special day would finally feel perfect after a lifetime of sacrifices. Then her voice shifted, a little sharper. And now, one person in our family decided to pull the rug out from under us. She said it without using my name, but the tag and the timing told the story. She talked about banks freezing accounts. She mentioned a mysterious legal issue, and she hinted darkly that someone had interfered out of jealousy and control. I watched 3 slides, then shut it off. My messages were already filled with reactions. Some were from people I barely remembered from high school. Some were church ladies my mom still met for coffee. Some were cousins I only saw on holidays. The pattern was the same. "Maya, what is going on? Savannah is devastated. Surely there is some misunderstanding. I am sure you have your reasons. But maybe try not to ruin your little sister's big day. Life is short. Weddings matter. Do not be selfish." I stared at one of them, a long paragraph from a former neighbor who had always favored Savannah. She wrote that there were better ways to handle family disagreements than using lawyers and banks. Then she ended with a line that landed like a familiar punch. "You have always been so strong and successful. Let this go. Your family needs you to be a bigger person." There it was, again. The expectation that my strength existed to cushion everyone else's bad decisions. Another notification popped up from my mom's best friend, Linda. "I do not know what Savannah is talking about, but your mom is beside herself. She says you are punishing them. Be kind, honey. Parents make mistakes." Parents make mistakes. Such a neat little phrase to cover forgery and fraud. I set the phone down, walked to the sink and ran the tap, letting the rush of water drown out the buzzing. I splashed my face, took a slow breath, and dried off with a dish towel. When I came back, there were 3 missed calls from Mom. I hit play on the newest voicemail. "Maya, it is your mom. I do not know why you are doing this to us. Her voice was already shaking. "Your sister is in pieces. Your dad has not eaten all day. The entire town is talking about us. People are calling me asking what is going on with the wedding and the house and the bank. You need to stop this. You are being cruel." I leaned my hip against the table and kept listening. "We are your family. We did what we thought was best. You freeze the money like this, involving lawyers, making us look like criminals." Her breath hitched. "I did not raise you to be this hard." I almost laughed at that. Hard. That was the word she chose. She kept going. "You have always had so much. Success, travel, the penthouse. You never wanted for anything. This was one thing your sister asked for. One. And now you are destroying it. Please, Maya, I am begging you. Call the bank. Fix this. Show some mercy." The message ended with a sharp sniff, like she had hung up in the middle of crying on purpose, hoping the sound would tug at something in me. It tugged at something, all right. Just not what she wanted. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an old family friend. "I do not know what is true or not, but your parents look broken. Maybe do not let pride make you do something you regret." I turned the screen off and let the darkness stare back at me. They were spinning. Hard. If they could not get the money, they were at least going to try to fix the narrative. Turn me into the villain in everyone's eyes before the legal truth caught up with them. A notification banner slid across my screen. A new voicemail, different numbers. Logan. I hit play. "Hey, it is me. Just a heads up. Your dad somehow got my office number and left 3 messages asking me to. Call him back. He wants to talk about a compromise. I will fill you in when you are free. But do not worry. I did not call him." My chest tightened and then relaxed. Of course, Dad would go after the one person he knew was standing between him and his version of control. A few minutes later, Logan called again, live. I answered on the first ring. He did not bother with small talk. "Your dad has been busy," he said. He left my receptionist a message saying he wanted to come in and talk man to man. Said he was sure we could work something out if I just heard his side. He also said you are emotional and dramatic. I stayed silent for a second, pressing my lips together. "What did you tell him?" I asked. Logan's voice was cool. "I told him I represent Nova Ridge Holdings and that any communication regarding the property or the frozen funds must go through formal channels. I also told him that you, as managing partner, have instructed me not to engage in private negotiations and that he should consult his own attorney." I could almost picture the expression on Dad's face when he heard that mix of offense and disbelief whenever someone told him no. Logan kept going. He did not like that answer, Maya. He tried to push. He said things like, "Surely we can keep this in the family. No need to involve courts." He hinted that he might convince you to change your mind if I just explained how much stress your mom is under. I repeated the same thing every time. I am not his lawyer. I am yours. And I am not here to make him feel better. A warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with being seen. "Thank you," I said quietly. He exhaled. "There is more. I got a written statement from the HOA manager. It is worse than I thought." I straightened. "What did it say?" Logan shuffled papers on his end, the faint sound of a page being turned. "Your dad did not just call once. He called 3 times over the course of 2 weeks. The first time, he claimed he needed to verify that the unit was still in your name for insurance purposes. The manager told him it was owned by Nova Ridge Holdings, and that any information beyond that had to go to the corporate contact on file. The second time, he asked whether an updated power of attorney could be used to sign for you on any property-related documents. The manager told him, again, that only an authorized representative from Nova Ridge could sign. Logan's voice dropped. The third time, he came in person. I gripped the edge of the table. In person. Yes. He showed up without an appointment and tried to suggest there were errors in the ownership records. The manager wrote that he insisted the penthouse was meant to be held as a family asset, not a corporate holding, and that he seemed irritated when he was told nothing could be changed without your signature as the company's managing partner. The manager flagged the interactions as concerning and added a note to the file in case anything came up later. I let that sink in. This had never been about a spur-of-the-moment mistake or last-minute panic. David had been laying groundwork, trying doors, testing locks. He just had not realized he was shaking the wrong handle the entire time. Logan continued. All of that is in writing now. It shows a clear pattern of intent. He knew he did not have authority, and he tried to find a way around that anyway. My jaw clenched. And now social pressure is the easiest tool they have, Logan said calmly. They cannot fight you legally, so they go after your reputation, make you seem cold, dramatic, ungrateful. It is a very old playbook. I thought of Savannah's stories, Mom's messages, the texts calling me selfish, all of it lining up with the same script I had been handed my whole life. Logan's voice softened a notch. I need you to remember something, Maya. You did not do this. You responded to it. I swallowed. At least my head knows. My heart is still catching up. There was a pause. The kind where two people let the truth sit between them without trying to. Decorated. Then he cleared his throat. All right. Last update for now. The bank forwarded our fraud packet to local authorities earlier this afternoon. The detective in charge sent me a brief acknowledgement. Their financial crimes unit has officially started reviewing the file. I went very still. So the police are involved now? Yes. Google's answer was simple, but it carried a weight all its own. This is not just between your family and a bank anymore. It is a criminal matter under review. I stared at the streak of late afternoon light cutting across the floor, the dust motes drifting lazily through it. Somewhere in Boulder, David and Mom were still telling anyone who would listen that this was just family drama gone too far. That it was my fault, that I was the one breaking the family apart. But in some quiet office, a detective was reading through documents with no emotional attachment, no loyalty, no history. Just facts. I let out a slow breath I had not realized I was holding. All right, I said. Keep me posted. I will, Logan replied. Try to rest if you can. Things are going to move quickly from here. After we hung up, I sat alone in the silence of my apartment, phone still in my hand, the echo of his last words lingering in the air. Things were moving quickly now, and for the first time in my life, the direction they were moving in did not revolve around protecting my family from themselves. Chapter 7. I stayed on the couch long after the last message from Logan, letting the quiet settle around me, when a firm knock sounded at the door. It was the kind of knock that carried purpose, not impatience. I set my phone aside, stood, and opened the door. A man in a navy suit introduced himself with a soft nod. Good afternoon, Miss Grant. I am Detective Owen Elliott with the Boulder County Financial Crimes Unit. I believe you were informed that we might need to speak with you. I stepped back so he could enter. His presence filled the room without feeling intrusive. He stood still for a moment, taking in the space the way investigators do. Not judging, just observing. He waited until I sat before taking the chair across from me. He placed a slim folder on the coffee table. Thank you for meeting with me. I know this is not a pleasant situation. My hands rested on my knees, palms open, steady. I understand. What do you need from me? He opened the folder, revealing printed forms, copies of the deed, and a checklist of required documents. To begin, I need to confirm information regarding Nova Ridge Holdings, specifically ownership documentation, operating agreements, and any transfers related to the Penthouse unit. I reached for the folder I had prepared the night before. Everything was tabbed, labeled, and organized. Years in finance had turned me into someone who prepared for storms even, before the clouds showed up. I slid the folder to him. These are the originals and certified copies. You will find notarized signatures, the LLC formation documents, and the deed transferring ownership from my personal name to Nova Ridge Holdings. He opened it and scanned the first few pages. His brows lifted slightly. This is thorough. A quiet breath slipped out of me. I have had to protect my assets from my family before. I learned the hard way. He nodded, as if that piece of context aligned a few puzzle pieces in his mind. We also need any evidence supporting the claim that your signature was forged during the sale process. You mentioned in your email that the signature on the sale contract did not match your own. I reached for another envelope and handed it over. Here are samples of my authenticated signatures from my employer, my previous mortgage documents, and my passport. And here is the contract signature they used. You can see the difference without magnification. He held the pages side by side, studying the strokes of ink. Even from a distance, you could see the obvious inconsistencies: the false curve of the G, the uneven spacing, the slanted M that did not match mine in any universe. He looked up slowly. I agree, these do not match. There was no satisfaction in hearing that, just a soft ache. The kind that comes when someone finally confirms a truth you never wanted to be true in the first place. Detective Elliot continued making notes. And to confirm, you were in Paris at the time of the supposed signing. Correct, yes. Not only that, but I have documentation of my itinerary and digital timestamps from when I received meeting minutes overseas. I can print those if needed. He nodded approvingly. We will take copies. Every detail helps. For several minutes, he went through questions. Precise, steady, neutral. I answered all of them calmly, but every now and then, a small knot tightened in my chest. Talking about the penthouse made me remember how much peace that space had brought me. How many years I had worked and sacrificed to earn it, and how easily my family had decided it belonged to them. After he finished the list, he closed his notebook. Thank you, Ms. Grant. I will also need to speak with each member of your family regarding their involvement, their knowledge of ownership, and their understanding of who had authority to execute any sale. I nodded. I had expected this part. They are not going to like that. He offered a small, sympathetic half smile. People rarely do, especially when the situation is as serious as this one. A few hours later, while Detective Elliot was still gathering records in my living room, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Your family is currently at the precinct for preliminary interviews. If you do not mind, I will step outside to take this. I gestured toward the door. Go ahead. He left the apartment and closed the door quietly behind him. Through the wall, only muffled tones reached me, but I could tell by the cadence that something had shifted. After a few minutes, he returned, his expression carrying a new weight. That was my colleague. They have begun questioning your parents and your sister. I waited, still and steady. How are they doing? He hesitated, choosing his words with care. Your mother is frightened. Your sister is emotional and angry. And your father... I looked up at the pause. What about my dad? His shoulders lowered slightly. Your father is beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. He said he believed he had the right to sign on your behalf. When asked why, he said he thought the penthouse was more of a family property and that the sale was temporary until he could purchase it back. I stared at him, the air shifting between us. Temporary. He nodded. That is what he said. A tightness moved across my chest. Something familiar and old. That was exactly how Dad had always viewed anything I earned. Mine, but only until he or Savannah needed it. Detective Elliot continued. When confronted with the LLC paperwork and the lack of legal authority, he became visibly distressed. He said he never intended to cause harm, and that this was a misunderstanding. That went further than he anticipated. I folded my hands together, resting them in my lap. Did he admit to signing anything? Elliot exhaled. He said he thought signing your name would be fine, because he planned to fix it later. He framed it as a small family issue, not a legal one. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed calm. That sounds like him. Elliot studied me for a moment before speaking again. Intent may affect how charges are handled, but forgery is still forgery, and the financial threshold involved here is significant. Silence settled between us again, but this time it held something heavier. There is one more thing, he said. I will be filing a formal report with the district attorney's office. It is likely that there will be a hearing scheduled within the next few weeks. A quiet breath left me, slow and steady. All right. I did not say anything else. He did not push. He simply gathered the folders, packed his notes, and stood. Thank you for your cooperation, Miss Grant. I will be in touch as this progresses. I walked him to the door. He offered a respectful nod before stepping out into the hallway. The door clicked shut softly behind him, leaving the apartment quiet again. I stood there for a long moment, letting the stillness settle over me. The weight of everything that had been unspoken for years was finally shifting, finally being named out loud by someone with the authority to see the truth clearly. And somewhere across town, in a fluorescent-lit interview room, Dad was learning that regret does not erase consequences. I walked back to the couch and sat down, pressed my palms against the cushions, steadying myself. The hearing was coming, and there was no turning back now. I walked out of the apartment the morning of the hearing, feeling steadier than I expected. The air in Boulder was crisp, the kind that wakes you up before your mind has fully caught up. I drove to the Colorado State District Court with the folder of documents. Beside me, though I knew Logan had already submitted everything days earlier, still, having them near felt like holding the truth in my own hands. When I reached the courthouse, Logan was waiting on the steps. He gave a small nod, the calm, anchored kind that always made me feel like the ground under me was solid. "You ready?" he asked. "I think so." Inside, the hallway buzzed with low murmurs and echoing footsteps. We entered the courtroom just as the clerk called the session to order. My parents were already seated at the table opposite ours. David looked like he had aged 10 years in a week. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes sunken, his jaw tight. Mom sat rigid beside him, hands clenched in her lap. Savannah, on the other hand, looking angry enough to set the wooden benches on fire with her stare alone. She glared at me as I took my seat, but I avoided her eyes. I kept my attention forward, steady. The judge entered, a tall man with silver hair and a neutral expression. He called the matter, reviewed the case file briefly, and asked both sides to proceed. The state's attorney began by presenting the key findings. "Your Honor, the property in question is legally owned by Nova Ridge Holdings. We have certified documentation showing the transfer of ownership from Ms. Grant to the LLC, including notarized signatures." He placed the documents before the judge, who read them carefully, nodding once. Then he continued. The sale transaction executed by Mr. Henry Grant was signed with a forged signature. Handwriting comparisons and time-stamped documents confirm Ms. Grant was in Paris at the time of the signing. Furthermore, HOA reports and bank statements show Mr. Grant attempted multiple times to obtain unauthorized information regarding the property. I could feel Dad shrinking beside the weight of every word. Logan rose next. "Your Honor, we are asking the court to declare the transaction void. Restore ownership to Nova Ridge Holdings immediately, and note for the record that the signature used to authorize the sale is fraudulent." The judge turned to Dad. "Mr. Grant, the court will hear your response." Dad stood, steadying himself with one hand on the table. "Your Honor, I understand how this looks, but the Penthouse was always meant to be a family property. Maya never really lived there. I thought the sale was temporary. I believed I could buy it back after the wedding. There was no malicious intent. This is a misunderstanding between family members." The judge raised his eyebrows slightly. "A misunderstanding." Dad nodded. "Yes, I thought I was doing what was best for everyone." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Grant, temporary or not, you signed documents you had no legal authority to sign. That alone invalidates your explanation. Intent does not change ownership rights or the law." Mom stood suddenly. "Your Honor, I had no idea Henry was handling any of this. I was not involved." The judge glanced at her, then at the papers. "Mrs. Grant, HOA records show you accompanied your husband to the office during one of his visits and asked for updated ownership files. Bank records show you also attempted to authorize withdrawals tied to the sale proceeds. Are you saying you do not recall these actions?" Mom's face went pale. She sat back down quietly, avoiding my eyes. Savannah bolted up next. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this whole thing got blown out of proportion. Maya is overreacting. This is a family matter. We just needed the funds for the wedding, and Dad was going to fix it. The sale should count. The vendors are going crazy. We cannot afford for this to fall apart." The judge held up a hand. Grant, sit down. This court is not interested in your wedding arrangements. This is a legal proceeding involving property fraud. Savannah's mouth fell open, but she obeyed, dropping into her seat with an indignant huff. The judge looked back at our table. Grant, do you have anything you wish to add? I stood, smoothing my palm against the table. Your Honor, all I want is for the legal rights to my property to be restored. My family chose to make decisions behind my back and used my name without consent. Whatever personal issues we have are separate from the fact that the sale was not authorized. That is all. My voice stayed calm, even, detached. The judge nodded once, then folded his hands. The evidence shows the property was unlawfully transferred. The signature was forged. The seller had no legal standing to execute the sale. Therefore, the transaction is void. Ownership is returned to Nova Ridge Holdings effective immediately. The matter will remain under investigation, pending the criminal review. A hearing may be scheduled in the coming weeks. The gavel fell with a sharp crack. Dad exhaled sharply, like someone had punched all the air out of his chest. Mom covered her mouth. Savannah muttered something under her breath that I could not hear, but did not need to. Logan touched my shoulder gently before gathering our papers. Let's go, he said softly. As we stood and walked toward the exit, I felt the weight of eyes on me. I did not turn back. I did not need to, but in the reflection of the glass doors ahead of me, I saw Dad looking away quickly, as if even meeting my eyes was too heavy for him now. Mom avoided my gaze entirely. Savannah sat stiff and boiling, fuming like the verdict had been aimed at her personally. I stepped out into the hallway, the air cooler, and strangely lighter than before. Outside the courtroom doors, the noise of the building buzzed around us, but for a moment, everything felt quiet inside me. The truth had been spoken. The law had taken its first step. The property was mine again. And behind me, my family could not even look at me. Chapter 9. I stepped out of the courthouse, the cold air brushing across my face, and for a moment, I let myself breathe. Not deeply, not peacefully, but enough to keep moving. The verdict had been clear. The signatures had been exposed, and the property was mine again. But the fallout had only just begun. By the next morning, the world around my family had shifted in ways they could not control. It started with a message from Avery. No greeting, no warm-up, just a link and a single line. Thought you should see this before it spreads. I tapped the link. It opened to an online article from a regional investigative site she had sometimes wrote for. Her name appeared right under the headline. Boulder family under scrutiny after alleged unauthorized property sale to fund luxury wedding. My stomach tightened, though I had known something like this was coming. The article laid everything out, not in a cruel way, not sensationalized, but in a factual, steady tone that made the truth impossible to ignore. Avery had written about the penthouse, the forged signature, the frozen funds, and the pending criminal review. She mentioned the wedding vendors, the canceled services, and the financial inconsistencies the bank had discovered. She never used my name. She did not have to. Anyone in Boulder who knew my family would fill in the blanks fast. I read slowly, line by line. By the time I reached the last paragraph, I could already imagine the whispering starting across neighborhoods, coffee shops, and grocery store aisles. I set my phone down, but it buzzed again almost instantly. Avery texted, "People will talk. They always do. But at least the facts are out there now." I replied with a simple thank you and put the phone aside again. It buzzed 3 more times, then 5. Then it wouldn't stop. I turned it over and saw message after message from relatives, neighbors, acquaintances, people I had not spoken to in years. "Maya, what on earth is going on? Is it true your dad forged your name? This is all over the neighborhood." Facebook group. "I cannot believe they did this to you." There was sympathy. There was confusion. There was judgment. But not a single message tried to defend what my family had done. Even the relatives who used to say Savannah deserved more than I did were silent now. The next notification came from Destiny. I opened it only because her name carried a different weight after everything that had happened. She wrote, "I need to inform you that I received a notice from the florist's attorney. They are suing me for guaranteeing payment based on your family's assurances. 2 other vendors are considering legal action. I wish I had known the truth sooner. I closed the message gently. Destiny had been caught in the crossfire of lies she never agreed to carry. A short while later, Avery sent another update. Social media is picking up the story. People are dragging Savannah for how she treated you. Screenshots of her wedding posts are everywhere. I went online long enough to see it for myself. Comments ranged from mocking her entitlement to criticizing the entire spectacle of the wedding. It did not feel good to watch, but it did not feel bad either. It simply felt inevitable. Then, a new piece of information surfaced, one I had not expected. A neighbor messaged me privately. I had no idea your dad lost his job months ago. Now everything makes sense. My breath halted. Dad had lost his job months ago. No one told me. No one even hinted at it. But suddenly, every desperate decision, every corner cut, every shortcut forced into place made a different kind of sense. I felt a flicker of pity that I quickly pushed down. Losing a job was heartbreaking. Forging your daughter's signature was criminal. More messages poured in. Your mom tried to take out a loan using your name a while back. We heard it was denied. Is that true? I closed my eyes as the pieces clicked together. The bank had flagged a suspicious loan application months before. I remembered the generic email alert. At the time, I thought it was spam. Of course Claire had tried something. Of course she had. Logan called as the messages kept stacking up. Things are accelerating faster than expected, he said. The DA's office is reviewing more documents. The media attention is making them move quickly. You should avoid speaking to reporters if anyone reaches out. I will, I said. And Maya, he added, I want you to take a step back from the noise. This kind of public narrative can wear you down. Focus on facts, not opinions. After we hung up, I sat in the stillness of my apartment. My chest felt tight, like all the years of being the dependable one, the quiet one, the fixer, were finally pushing their way up through my ribs. For the first time in a long time, I opened the contacts list on my phone and scrolled to a name I had saved months earlier, but never called. Harper Lane, the therapist Nora had recommended back when I thought my stress was just work-related. I never followed through. I always told myself I could handle things on my own. I pressed her number before I could talk myself out of it. She picked up on the second ring. This is Harper. Hi. My voice wavered, surprising me. This is Maya Grant. You may not remember, but I emailed you earlier this year. A friend recommended it to you. I remember, she said gently. What can I help you with today? I hesitated. My throat tightened. Then the truth slid out, small but sharp. Everything is falling apart, and I do not know how to feel about it. She asked where I was and whether I felt safe. I said yes. She asked whether I was alone. I said yes again. Then she invited me to come in that afternoon if I wanted. So I drove to her office, a quiet building near the edge of town, tucked between a small cafe and a florist. When I walked inside, the warmth hit me first. Then the soft lamp lighting. Then Harper herself, offering a calm smile as she gestured toward the couch. Tell me what happened, she said. At first I talked about facts, the penthouse, the forged documents, the wedding, the frozen funds, the court hearing. My voice stayed steady, detached, like I was narrating someone else's life. She listened without judgment. Then she leaned forward slightly. And how did it feel to watch all of this unravel? Something inside me cracked at the question. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, the way a hairline fracture spreads across glass. I took a breath and my voice thinned. Why did they never see me as a person? The silence that followed was soft, not heavy. Harper waited, giving me room to breathe, room to unravel without breaking. And I sat there, hands in my lap, staring at a tissue box I did not reach for, feeling the question echo inside me like it had been waiting years to come out. The room felt still, warm, safe enough for the truth to finally rise. I exhaled slowly, letting the air leave my chest in a long, shaky stream. And that was where the session left me. It without the one question I had never dared to ask out loud. Why did they never see me as a person? I knew Harper didn't expect me to answer it right away, and maybe that was why it echoed so loudly. It wasn't simply a question about my parents. It was a question about who I had allowed myself to become in their presence. 3 weeks after that session, life finally answered for me. Detective Elliot called early on a Thursday morning. His voice was steady, respectful, but there was a heaviness to it that told me everything before he even spoke. The words: "The investigation is complete. The district attorney believes there is sufficient evidence to pursue charges against your parents." I sat down slowly at my kitchen table, my fingers curling around the coffee mug I hadn't touched yet. I asked him to repeat it, not because I didn't hear him, but because I needed to hear it twice. Forgery, fraud, attempted unlawful withdrawal, misrepresentation of ownership. Each word landed like a soft thud. Not painful, not shocking, just final. He added that neither charge was violent, and that they would likely be permitted to handle parts of the process through their attorney rather than in custody. It was a courtesy, he said, not leniency. Naming the crime was enough to change the course of their lives. And mine. After the call, I stared out the window for a long time, watching the sunlight move across the hardwood floor in long, slow bands. I thought of Dad sitting at the kitchen table I grew up around, hunched over the bills he never let anyone else see. I thought of Mom pouring coffee, telling him it would all work out. I thought of Savannah upstairs, dreaming of centerpieces and color palettes. I wondered when they realized the consequences were real. When did the line between careless entitlement and actual criminal behavior blur for them? Did they ever truly believe they could pull this off? Or did they think I would simply roll over the way I always had? The truth was, I would never know. And that had to be enough. The fallout from the investigation spread through Boulder faster than wildfire on dry grass. I first learned about Savannah's canceled wedding from a cousin who messaged me in a tone that mixed sympathy with disbelief. "I heard the engagement is off. Are you okay?" I blinked at the screen. Me? Was I okay? The fiancé had apparently called off the wedding once the legal issues became public. I imagined his family sitting around a dining table, passing around Avery's article, whispering, calculating how deeply they wanted to be tied to the grants. It did not take much imagination to picture him backing out. Savannah's reputation had become a spectacle overnight. Screenshots of her old posts, her entitled comments, her bragging about the luxury wedding, all resurfaced and spread like wildfire. The glamorous image she built for years crumbled under the weight of public scrutiny. I did not feel vindicated. I did not enjoy her humiliation. I simply felt like the universe had paused long enough to let consequences catch up. Days later, another ripple hit. A neighbor reached out, hesitating through every typed word. "I don't know how to say this, but your dad lost his job months ago. He's been pretending everything is normal. Now this investigation is making things harder. I thought you should know." I read the message slowly. It fits. It filled in the missing pieces of his desperation. Suddenly, the forged signature, the rush to liquidate assets, the urgency to fund Savannah's wedding, all made a different kind of sense. Losing a job could break a person, but breaking the law to fix the wound was a choice. Mom wasn't spared either. News spread that she'd attempted to take out a loan using my information. The bank had flagged it immediately. A branch manager sent a warning letter to their address. She had wiped it under the rug and never mentioned it. Now the bank reopened her file, reviewing earlier attempts they had dismissed as clerical errors. It was like every buried truth clawed its way to the surface at once. Logan called to check on me more than once during those days. "Are you holding up?" he asked. I told him I was fine. Most days that was true. Some days I wasn't sure. "You should avoid the media," he advised. "People will try to spin this. Don't answer questions. Everything goes through me now." His voice was calm, but I could hear the weight he was carrying for me. I was grateful he didn't try to shield me from the truth. He respected me too much to offer comfort that wasn't rooted in reality. Then, quietly, without announcing it, something inside me began to shift. One morning, I woke up without the familiar heaviness. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. I worked, and for the first time in weeks, my own life felt larger than the chaos orbiting my family. It wasn't healing, exactly, more like the first tiny stretch of scar tissue forming over a long, open wound. That was when Dad's email arrived. The sender box alone made my chest tighten. Henry Grant. His message was long, the longest thing he had ever written to me in his entire life. Maya, I know I do not deserve your time. I want to apologize. I want to explain why I did what I did, but explanations do not fix anything. I made choices I thought I could control. I believed I could manage the consequences. I never meant to hurt you. He went on to describe losing his job, the embarrassment, the panic, the desire to give Savannah the kind of wedding he thought would make her feel valued. He wrote about the shame he felt when the bank questioned his authority. He wrote about the moment Detective Elliott confronted him with documents, couldn't deny. Then he wrote the one sentence I never thought I would see. You deserved better than what I gave you. I read the email twice, then a third time. I waited for something inside me to open or close or break. Instead, I felt a clarity I had never known. His apology did not rewrite the past. It did not heal the scar. It simply closed a door. I did not reply. Some things do not require answers. The next morning, Logan arrived at my apartment with coffee and a folder. Everything is ready, he said. If you are sure. I knew what he meant. The Penthouse documents, the sale authorization, the official transfer forms back through Nova Ridge Holdings and out to the real estate broker. I nodded. Let's go. We drove to the building in a comfortable silence. When we reached the top floor, the hallway was still and quiet. I unlocked the door and stepped into the space that had once felt like the first real home I ever owned. Sunlight poured in through the windows, casting warm patterns on the floor. For a moment, I simply stood there, letting the quiet wash over me. The penthouse felt different now. Not tainted, not hollow, but completed somehow, like a chapter that had reached its natural endpoint. Are you sure you want to sell? Logan asked. Yes. Why? I walked to the window and looked out over the city I had built my life in. The mountains stretched across the horizon, tall and steady and sure. Because I want a life that is mine alone, not something tied to what they tried to take, not something that holds the memory of this fight. Something new, something untouched. He nodded slowly. Then let's make it official. We sat at the kitchen island while I signed the documents one by one. When I finished, he slipped them into his briefcase and stood. That's it, he said softly. That's it, I echoed. We walked out together. The elevator chimed softly as it arrived. I stepped inside, watching the penthouse hallway shrink behind me. I didn't look back. Some spaces are meant to be honored and released. Outside, the air felt lighter, cleaner, like the world had shifted a few inches to make room for a life I had not yet lived. That night, after Logan left, I sat by my window with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The city lights blinked softly in the distance. Cars moved along the boulevard in slow streams. I could hear faint laughter from a neighboring balcony. Life kept moving, and for the first time, I felt like mine could finally begin. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who tried to earn her family's love by being indispensable, the one who believed self-worth was something handed down instead of built from within, the one who kept giving until she was too tired to remember what she wanted for herself. I whispered into the quiet room, I see you now. I won't lose you again. Losing my family in this way felt like losing a limb I had already learned to live without. It hurt, but the pain was clean, honest, a wound that would scar and stay, but no longer define me. And as I sat there, I realized I wasn't mourning what I lost. I was mourning what I never had. A family that saw me, loved me, respected me. By midnight, the grief gave way to something else. Relief. The kind that comes when you finally put down a weight you didn't realize you went. had been carrying since childhood. And now, before I close my story, I want to speak to you, the one listening, on the other side of this moment. If you have ever been told you were too much or not enough for your own family, remember this: silence can be power, and truth can be the loudest revenge. Tell me in the comments what integrity means to you and where you are listening from.